Welcome back to the Turnaround Boardroom. I am your host, Paul Maskill, and this podcast is for home service business owners who want to understand their numbers better. When we stop lying to ourselves, we remove our emotion, remove our ego and our excuses, and we're going to let the numbers guide us. We focus on helping home service business owners create predictable profitability, consistent positive cash flow. Today, we have with us a fellow business owner on the show. This is not just a success story. We're going to dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of AJ's story. He runs an actual business just like you, and it's a business that's growing quickly. All of our episodes, again, discussing real businesses. Nothing here should be considered financial, legal, or tax advice for your specific situation. Every business, including yours, is different. So today we have with us AJ Wadian. AJ is the co-founder and CEO of Premier Home Pros. His company is the fastest growing home improvement company in the U.S., going from $0 to $150 million in sales in just 3 years. AJ, welcome to the show. Excited to have you.
Paul, thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to learning more about you and your journey. And so, what were you doing before Premier Home Pros? How'd you get to where you are today?
I'm a lifer in the industry, man. I'll be 38 in like 11 days here, but I started in the industry at 21 years old, and I worked with a company called Erie. It's a pretty big name in the industry today, but at that time they weren't. They were probably like a 30, maybe a $40 million a year company, which is still sizable. But I spent 6-7 years with them. I really learned a lot in the home services industry, and then I kind of moved on to the next chapter, and I worked with a company called Leaf Filter, which most people in the industry know that name now. I relocated for Erie in Atlanta, Georgia, and then I ended up going back to Northeast Ohio, and that's when I kind of went to my second chapter at Leaf. And at that time, Leaf was like 34 million, and we stayed aboard for 7 years, and we grew that company to $1.6 billion, and that kind of led me here, and I relocated for Leaf too. I went out to Philadelphia and spent a number of years out in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But, home was always Northeast Ohio, and my family was here and rooted, and so are my children. So it just got to the point where I just needed to make a change in my life, and it wasn't really a financial decision. It was more of just like a decision for my family. So I said, well, let's just be crazy and let's jump into the business owning phase and let's own a business. And here I am, right? So me and my partner Noah, we ended up starting Premier, and we kind of put the business together in November of 2022, and in December 7th of 2022 was the first day that we started running appointments for Premier. Bathrooms was like, we looked at the list of all the large companies across the country, just being in high growth companies before. I said, which sector of business can we try to take over? Which one isn't diluted and built up with a lot of huge conglomerates, and bathrooms kind of stood out, and that was how we made a decision to go into bathrooms. So started running appointments in December of 2022, and we realized we had something there. We sold about $600,000 our first month, and we demoed 90% of our appointments that we put on the calendar, and we closed 81% of those, and we said, wow, there's something special here, right? And then it comes with its own turbulence, and you learn as you go, and the business kind of just started growing, and we decided to open a couple locations that year, and next thing you know, at the end of 2023, we were at $15 million, and started getting into the optics out there. People are like, wow, how'd you grow a business from 0 to 15 in 11 months? And it was just consistent process and putting long hours in, and just finding a way to get it done. We got to the end of that year, and I said, you know what, like, we're all here for the big dream. Like, we want to do something incredible, and we want to keep growing this organization and bring people along the ride. But to scale the business, there was a piece of the puzzle that was missing, and that was a person that knew marketing. With my background being in sales and operations, and Noah, having a little bit of a background for a few years in home improvements. His was more sales. He worked for me at the previous company, and I said, we need a marketing guy. Like, we need someone that knows how to scale growth. So I worked with Vince Vendetti at Leaf for a number of years, and we knew of each other. He supplied marketing for my locations, but we didn't work in the same building, but we knew each other and respected each other. And I said, let's reach out to him and see, like, where he's at in his stage of life. And just so happened he left Leaf like 8 or 9 months before he reached out, and he started a new chapter, ARS, which was a large residential, it was their residential HVAC company. They're about a $2 billion company. And he finally landed that long search, CMO job. So I'm like, we got no shot to get this guy. I'm like, let's just, find a way to get some breakfast with this guy and see if we can get some information, and maybe he can put us on a path that we can meet somebody else that he knows. And, we sat down that morning, me, Noah, and him for breakfast, and he was infused with interest. Like, he was just like, wow, like, this is incredible, like what you guys have done. And, it just reminds me of the beginning days of Leaf Filter. So, he left excited, but we didn't think he'd call us 2 hours later and say, I'm ready to quit my job and come work with you. Right? And I said, well, and how are we going to afford you? Because we can't afford you. But, it's kind of the world finds a way to make things happen that are supposed to happen. And, he ended up coming aboard, and we became a 3-team partnership. And 2024 was a magical year for Premier. We went from 15 to 86 million, and we opened 6 new organic locations. And then last year we opened 5 more locations, and we did $150 million. So, where we're at presently today is 16 locations serving 22 states, and on a path right now pacing around $250 million this year in bathroom sales.
Phenomenal. When you guys started, so you and Noah had this idea, you're like, let's go do this business ownership thing.
Yeah.
What was the initial vision or goal when you started it out? What did that look like? At least, what were the dreams?
It was to grow, to be a national brand. Like that was always, I came from this accelerated growth phase for all these years. So I'm like, I can't imagine this being like a one office company that just has 2 or 3 employees. Like, I always kind of been a dream big guy. And I said, if we're going to do it, and I'm going to leave my job at Leaf making really good money, I want to do something incredible and, put my mark on the industry. And that was the goal. Just how fast we were going to get there, I don't think we envisioned it'd be this fast.
Gotcha. So obviously you guys have gone really quick. You've said, when you go that quick, no matter what you're doing, there's going to be turbulence. You said,
Absolutely.
you even alluded to it. Looking back over the last, 3 years, what was like one of the most turbulent times that just sticks out in your head or Noah's head? Like, you're like, man, that was pretty wild.
Some advice that I got a long time ago, like from some senior leadership that I worked with in the industry before, was that, when someone can do something 80% as good as you should delegate it if you want to be able to grow, right? And my problem was always being able to let go of the pulse, like allowing somebody else to do the job. Because I just felt if I did it, I know it's going to be done the way that I envision it to be right. And, I can control that growth, or I can fix those problems. And when I give that to somebody else, does that happen? So I think the challenge has always been, because it's a people business, is the next person going to be able to duplicate what you've done and be able to do it at the same level of efficiency? So that's been some of the challenges in opening these new locations, is getting these locations out to a start that we're rolling in sales out the gate, we're installing the jobs quick, we're collecting all the accounts receivable fast, we're doing all these things at scale but still at a high level of efficiency. I think that's the challenge as a business owner when you start growing wide and hoping that gets repeated. So you got to have good processes in place.
So yeah, let's kind of dig into that a little bit. Obviously, you're adding these locations. What is your kind of you don't have to get into like too much of the weeds, but the overarching business model? Hey, we want to go in an area. What does that look like? Who's in place? What's the sales?
Yep.
I assume mostly subcontractors doing the work, but like, what's the 30,000 foot view of your model when you're adding all these locations?
What it looks like today versus what it looked like in the beginning is a lot different. But in the beginning, it was like, these are the largest DMAs, right? Like, these are the largest areas, and we know if there's a large population, there's a large demand, and there's opportunity there, right? But then you don't weigh in like, well, yeah, so there's a large opportunity there, but it's ate up by a lot of the large competitors too, because they're also thinking the same thing. So we found some diamonds in the rough, along the way that we're like, hey, we think this could be a great office, and then we start marketing the area, and we're like, wow, this eastern part of that location has no competition. Like, let's put a location over here. There's nobody there, right? And we've learned that along the way, but we've presented some really, really detailed data models now, which is one of the advantages of having like a guy like Vince. He's really good at automation and data, and we built some really cool data dashboards that can address the total single family dwelling units in a location. It will weigh the competitors. It will weigh the poverty rate, the average FICO score, and what that opportunity is to capture demand from the partnership level on marketing. How many leads could you produce? What's that opportunity? And we can kind of scale those KPIs out to say, this is estimated pretty closely what we think we could do in annual sales in bathrooms, right, in this location. So we've really got detailed in the data this last couple of years to make those decisions based on that format. And at this point now, we have like the next 30 locations already built out. So now it's just running the run rate, right? So when you look at it and you move that into an actual tangible thing, and you open a location up, you're looking for a flex space. That flex space has somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 square feet of warehouse, and then maybe 1,500 to 2,000 square feet of office space. And then you staff that with a sales manager or a general sales manager, a production manager that controls all your crews. They have an assistant project manager. We have a service tech, and we have a field trainer for installation. So a lot of installation support staff, and then the sales team, they go to work. I mean, your sales manager starts getting recruiting interviews from our internal recruiting team, and we're pushing sales teams into interviews and start building out teams and training. And that happens the same way with the installation team. We start finding crews through recruiting, and we start bringing those to the office and start building out an install team. And 45 days later, you got a profitable location.
That's impressive. So from a marketing standpoint, it kind of sounds like, obviously Vince is doing a lot of this work in the background. Are you guys are you marketing your services in that area before everything else? So that way, when you open the door, you hit the ground running, or what does that look like? Because to be able to get up, the revenue you guys are doing pretty quickly is pretty impressive. So just curious on kind of the marketing side of things, of how that plays in the timeline. So
we deal with probably 30 different marketing partners, outside of offline and like, print and TV and all that. We deal with a conglomerate of partners that we either buy branded campaigns from, or they create campaigns for us. And we'll send them out, here's the projected locations we're going to go into about 60 days ahead. And they'll do like a market analysis. They'll say, here's the amount of leads we can drive for you. Here's the amount of raw leads we can get. And then we just run that conversion table. What percentage of those will turn into a set appointment? What percentage will turn into a confirmed appointment? How many of those will demo? How many of those will sell, right? Just based off past data. So that's part of it. And then really the week before we start running appointments, we turn the leads on about 6 days ahead of time. And we start booking them on the calendar. So typically, like what we call our set gap, our call center will call appointment today, and they'll set that appointment within 2 days from today. No longer, either today, next day, or the day after. Well, in this occasion, they're setting it 6 days ahead of time. So they're really booking the calendar up for the first week. You got a lot of appointments, and then it kind of starts to level out a little bit. So yeah, it gives us an advantage to hit the ground running out the first week, put a lot of sales on the board, get those new installers that are hungry for work, get them installing the new jobs, and then we build a little bit of a backlog so that it's sustainable throughout the next 30 days.
That's awesome. Let's start getting into the numbers a little bit. Obviously, a lot of our show is about, the numbers, the financials. When you guys started, I'm just curious because I know everyone's journey is different. When you guys started compared to where you are today, what were some of the things that you thought to be true that, from a financial standpoint, not true, whether it's pricing, overhead, operating expenses, service mix, whatever it might be, or what was right, and like where were you guys dialed in pretty quickly? Just wanted to kind of get an insight into the financial side of things a little bit.
We find ourselves dialed into the things that we're really good at, right? And those things that we're really good at is creating leads, selling the leads at a very, very high conversion rate, and installing them quickly, right? Those are the three things that we're really good at. And then when you look at that in a traditional sense, where you're like, well, then you're making great money. If you can buy a lead, sell a lead, install a lead, you're making money. There's a lot of gray area in there. It's, you realize that the cost of COGS, it's more than you anticipate, right? And the more that you buy, the more that you spend, you got to move away from that eventually. So in the bathroom industry, the cost of your COGS, your cost of goods sold, it's expensive. it's a lot more expensive than the other industries that I've been in. We're typically like the golden rule between COGS, including labor, is around 33%. Like that's the golden rule, right? And anything above that is, starts to be in the terms of danger zone, I guess you'd call it. Bathrooms, like they hover between 35 and 40%. And that's an adjustment that you have to make to find better efficiencies in other parts of the business. Like, well, then you got to get better at sales than what you're already good at, or you got to find a way to drive down your marketing spend to accommodate the other 6 to 7% overlap in COGS. And fixed costs are fixed costs. So I think the opportunity and the challenges that we've addressed year over year is getting better at driving those ancillary things down, driving the marketing costs down. Leases are leases, up in the average sale a little bit, and moving away from that COG percentage. And then we made some transformative things this year where we actually are now manufacturing our own products. So we've drove down the COG percentage tremendously. That's awesome.
So let's get into COGS a little bit, because the work that I do as a CFO on a daily basis, usually gross profit is 9 times out of 10 the biggest issue that a company faces. They don't know how to price based on the cost of their labor, cost of their material, supplies, all of that. What have you guys found that works or doesn't work when it comes to managing what the material expenses are, or managing what the labor is, and making sure we're getting things done on time, and making sure when we're job costing, we're actually hitting our numbers? What do you guys have in place to make sure you guys are staying dialed in from a cost standpoint?
Everything's modeled out, extremely process driven on everything from material costs. There's a multiplier in every one of those line items that gets put into the CRM. So when we're looking at sales pricing, it's all built out based on profitability, regardless if they sell the job high or they sell the job discounted. There's still a safe zone there on the multiplier. And then we model out extensively, commission percentages, and those are tiered based off discounts. So the lower they discount, the lower they make, right? So those go hand in hand. And then we don't do a lot of line item pricing when it comes to labor pricing. We do package price. So you can really control that. You have a lot of cohesion there with installation being the same percentage almost on every job, and that number for us is to typically get it below 10%. If you can get labor below 10%, you're in good shape. And that is something that I have found, is pretty linear across the industry, and most industries where labor under 10%, you're in good shape there. So modeling those two things out, sales commission and labor percentage, offsets a lot of that. And then really what you're doing is building package pricing to dictate your profitability.
Yeah, the package pricing is huge because, as you know, and hopefully our listeners know, when you itemize everything, the customer like, wait, I'm paying that for labor and paying that for material, when really there's thousands of expenses that go into running a business. Labor and material just happen to be two of them, but to a customer, for whatever reason, they're like, what's the labor and material? But when you go buy anything else, they're not telling you the breakdown of a $60,000 car. It's like, hey, this is the car price. You want it or not? Right. What I've really started to take away from this is everything you guys do. You've said it many times. It's modeled out. We're using the numbers, and that's what's guiding our decision. When you first started, were you guys like, how did you guys first start? Because I feel like a lot of business owners first just kind of like pick numbers, right? And they're like, well, that's what we need to make. Right. How did you guys start? Because everything you've told me, in the last 15 to 20 minutes is like, there's models, there's numbers, and we're letting that dictate everything. Where were you guys at when you first started?
So I built it out where it was very, very modeled out. Like we said, here's every single piece and part that we would sell. And, we 3.5x every one of those and figured out sales pricing so that was in line with materials, and we weren't getting gouged there. But, there's things that you don't take account for, like what's the cost of service? Like jobs are going to have service. Well, let's say, for instance, you make $3,000 of profit on one job. Well, if you got to tear the walls out and go back because there's a leak, you pretty much lost half the profit right then and there on one service. So you find those things that you don't plan for because you didn't think scale would happen so quickly. So there's parts of those things where there's some deficiencies there. But yeah, we had it modeled out. Like process is what has given us this ability to do this. Like sales process, marketing process, call center process, installation process. But COGS going up and down, makes a difference. Price increases from your manufacturer that gets passed to you. You have no control over that. You have to raise pricing for that. Marketing costs. The first 2 years of the business, we battled with a high marketing cost. Well, there's a bad recipe with high COGS and high marketing costs. Those two don't go together, So we also chose as a business to worry about scaling growth in the beginning versus scaling efficiency. I don't believe growth and efficiency go together very well. Rarely do they. If you want to grow, you need to be okay with making probably less profit for the short term. If you want to make a lot of profit, then you sustain the growth, but you do it at a much more slower and controlled rate.
Yeah, and that's really, that's so important because I feel, a lot of people want both, right? Or they don't have the capital, but they want to do both of like, hey, we want to grow really fast, but we also need to make a lot of money, and to grow really fast, we need to make investments, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in people, whether it's in overhead systems, all the things that we need to. So how were you guys able to then, obviously going from 0 to 150 million, you're going to do 250 to 300 million this year. That's a lot of investment in all the things that we just referenced. How have you guys been able to manage, cash flow, operating expenses, capital and capital needs for a business that's growing this quickly?
I don't ever want to use the term unicorn, but I'm going to say it, right? Like when I tell you that we started the business with $65,000, that's what we started the business with, $65,000. And we've never, ever used debt the entire time in the company. We've never used debt. We finally just got a credit line this year to be able to use it in case we need it for our manufacturing. Right now with, buying our own tooling overseas and doing all the things that we're doing to mass produce material, you're talking tens to 15s of millions of dollars to do that. And you're buying large quantities now and holding your own distribution center, controlling your own logistics and stuff. So it's a mountain of a climb there, right? But we've never used debt the entire time. The business is cash flowing itself. And that happens by being able to be very fast on getting the jobs done. We're able to install a shower within 7 days, time of sale. So within 7 days, we're collecting the money we put out.
And what are your normal terms? Do you guys collect? And obviously, every maybe it's different size jobs, different things, but collecting deposit up front, final due upon completion. What does your structure look like there?
So cash jobs, we do 25% down and 75% upon the completion. And then finance jobs, we work with lenders that offer stage financing. So, if you and your wife wanted to do a shower, you just didn't have the money up front and you wanted to finance it, the bank will give you that 25% down payment. They'll draw it to us first out of that financing. So if the job's, let's say $10,000, they'll give us $2,500 up front. And then we get paid on the 75% once it's done.
Beautiful. Where's this thing going next? Obviously, you said you want to grow, but like it's 2026. If we chat with you in 2030, 4 or 5 years from now, what's Premier Home Pros doing?
Well, it's God willing, right? Like if
God willing,
all those things are are in good shape, health, and all those things. But we're opening a secondary product line. We start selling it next Monday. First time in history. We've always been just a bath company. Now we're doing whole house flooring. So we're about to shake the industry of flooring quite a bit. These flooring companies aren't ready for what's about to happen, I don't think. But and maybe we're not ready for what's about to happen. I don't know. But we're going to find out at a crash course here. So this year we're projecting to about $57 million in flooring and $250 million in bathrooms. I would say next year's jumps $500 million, and then we'll be at $1 billion in 3 years. Be $1 billion company. You got 3 owners that, and I know this sounds funny, but 3 owners that we're not here for the money. Money's part of it. We're here to do something transformational to the industry. It's just never been done. At the rate that it's been done. It's the chase that's contagious. The chase of it. That's kind of always been the recipe to the madness here. Is we're we're just chasing something that hasn't been done, and we like that. We like the appetite for that. That's why we're built. So I'd love to be in a position to have. Right now, we have about 500 employees at the company, and I'd love to employ a few thousand people, and allow people to make this a place to work at, a great place to work, and keep expanding across the country. There's a lot of green space left across the United States right now that we're not in, that we plan to be in. We got 5 more locations to open this year. We're opening our second location of the year on the 15th of March in Minneapolis. And then we're going into the Texas locations in St. Louis and Richmond and Boston. So it's still a lot of work to be done this year, but we haven't been to the West Coast much. So we're looking forward to doing that in 2027.
I figured there'd be more than just bathrooms, just based on your name. So flooring's coming. Flooring will be here. If I had to guess, if I was betting, there'd probably be other things, 2028, 2029. I want to shift a little bit just to like leadership management. Yeah. Obviously, when you and Noah started, just the two of you, now you got 500 employees. What are some things you've had to change, or some things you've had to learn, or some things you've had to stop doing from a leadership standpoint, just to go, from 0 employees to 500?
You got to realize that everybody's wired differently, right? I find that people are normally motivated by 3 things. They're either motivated, they're motivated by money. They will do whatever it takes to make money for their household or for themselves. But when you're motivated by money, to get money, you're gonna sacrifice time. That's just kind of how that always works. Then you got another person that's motivated for growth. So they want to grow in the hierarchy of the organization, and they're willing to sometimes sacrifice upfront pay scale to get there. And then you have the person that's work-life balance. They say, listen, this is a job to me. It's not your ambition's not my ambition. I want to work a 9 to 5, and I want to go home to my family and be able to be a mom or a dad. And I respect those people too. So it's learning how to figure out what their ticker is and all that, and find the motivators to be able to drive growth inside the organization and put people in the right places to succeed. I think that's the pivotal change, that when you start dealing with the amount of employees that we have now, is that the sales guy is different than the call center person, and the marketing person is different than the call center person, and what drives them is differently. So you gotta learn your people and understand what motivates them every day, and still maintain a great culture inside the space.
Yeah, the culture piece is huge. When you got 500 people, and I think it is, sometimes it's really difficult as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, to put yourself in other people's shoes of like, man, why don't they want to do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't make sense to us because we are wired differently. But when you really start to realize, the work-life balance is really, right? They're motivated by time, or they're motivated by money, or by growth. And when you can figure that out and align it with your organization, especially when you got 500 people, there's roles for everybody. Hey, we're always going to need, someone to manage a call center. If that's all you want to do and you're great at it, have at it. If you want to move up, there's going to be other opportunities, which, then it's looking into the money and the growth. So I love that, looking at that way, because I feel sometimes we as entrepreneurs, we as business owners sometimes can get frustrated being like, why don't they just do that? It just doesn't make sense.
It's also one of the things where you got to realize that, and this was a hard thing for me because maybe it's just the way that my mental makeup was, is that everybody has a shelf life too. And what I mean by that is like the person that grew you to 50 million might not be the same person that grows you to 500 million. And you got to be able to put that person in a place to succeed, but maybe that's not the title or position that they're currently in as you go to that next stage of growth. And I've realized I've had a lot of people take a bet on me, where they were at Leafield, or they were at Erie, they were at places that I've built a great relationship with them. And they believed in enough in the dream that at that one point Premier was nothing but a dream, that I'm going to come, chase this with you because I believe that you'll make it successful. But you feel entitled to make sure that those people are successful themselves, not just for you. But you also realize that the position that they were in 3 years ago maybe isn't the position they're in today, and finding a place for them to succeed. That's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah. And it's being able to have those, quote unquote, difficult conversations too, of, like you said, people who got us to 50 million isn't the same people that's going to get us to 500. There's nothing wrong with that. I always equated to sports teams, right? Like the team that gets you just above 500, or the team that just gets you to the playoffs, probably is the same team that's going to get you to to win the Super Bowl or win the the World Series or whatever it might be. And the teams that do that the best are always kind of retooling and moving people around and realizing, hey, this person, they kind of served their purpose, and now we need someone to supplant that.
Yeah.
And being able to have those conversations is huge. So let's wrap this up a little bit. Just one last question on the financial piece. For somebody that's listening to this that also wants to scale quickly, they got these big dreams, goals, aspirations to do something similar. What's one of the biggest, whether it's a financial warning sign or financial indicator, that you recommend nobody listening to this ignore?
I think it always starts with knowing your business first, right? You got to know your business inside and out. So you got to understand thoroughly, what makes the business successful today, and what chances are you willing to take when you go outside that box of something that's been systematic for a period of time. Are you willing to take those chances and go outside the box to scale growth? And what suffers in the short term when you do that, right? And most of the time, like I said this a little bit ago, I think it's going to be short-term profit, or you might have to shuffle the deck and some other line items in the P&L that you have to sacrifice a higher percentage for to get there, because it's really hard to scale and do it efficiently in the intro stages of it until everything stabilizes in the business and readjusts. But you got to know your business inside and out. And when I say that, I'm comfortable enough that other than being a CFO, I'm certainly not that, and I'm certainly not a data guy. But outside of those things, I feel like I could jump into any role in the business and I know it enough. I've spent enough hours and time in building out processes or being involved in it that I could bandage a wound if I had to jump in and take care of that position for a period of time. So knowing your business is key before you start worrying about how you're going to grow it, at a expedited rate.
Yeah. And, hitting back to, what sacrifices are you willing to make? Because I see it all the time. The owner is paying themselves $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, whatever, and then they want to scale and they need to spend a little bit more money on marketing, or they've got to, go hire a sales manager, or service manager, or general, whatever it is. But then they have to go home to their spouse and family and be like, look, I got to take a pay cut short term because we're hiring this person. We're going to suck it up for 12 months and only make $200,000. But, 2 years from now, then we'll have a business that doesn't need me all the time, and then allows us to continue to scale. Going back to what you said originally, being okay, not doing everything and taking that control away. So, AJ, thank you again for coming on the show today. If our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, myself and my business owners, we're very active on LinkedIn. Or if you're a customer, www.premier-homepros.com. Or if you just want to go on the website, just learn a little about the company. But yeah, online presence for sure. LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out.
Perfect. Go to LinkedIn, connect with AJ. His last name is spelled Wadina. Appreciate. What's that?
Wadian.
Oh, did I? Yeah, that's what I have typed. I must have said it wrong. So yeah, Wadian. Wadian. AJ, appreciate you, sir. Anybody else, if this episode sounds familiar or inspires you and you want to come on the show as well, just like AJ did, send me an email, paul@thebluecollaradvisors.com. Our number one focus is interviewing home service business owners who are either stuck in the grind or made it to the other side. AJ, thanks again for coming on the show.
Paul, thanks for having us. I appreciate the time.